Good afternoon and welcome to the next session of the day, Redefining the Developmental Curriculum in Virginia. Our presenter today is Kate Sharp with Hawks Learning. If you have any questions for Kate during the session, please feel free to enter those into the chat at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. Don't forget that we will be raffling 3 $25 Amazon gift cards at the end of this session. Be sure to check the link in the chat to enter. And on that note, I will hand it over to Kate.
Thanks so much, Joanna, and hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Again, my name is Kate, and I am the Hawks Learning educational courseware representative for Virginia. So I am very excited to virtually meet you all and present on some of our materials. But with that, let me go ahead and share my screen, and we can get started. Will someone just give me a thumbs up or confirm that you can see the screen? Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys. So today we're going to be discussing redefining the developmental curriculum in Virginia. And again, my name is Kate Sharp. I am excited to talk through this with you all. So here is our agenda. We'll just do a little bit of an introduction. We'll talk about the Virginia developmental course offerings and some of the Hawks titles that could be a really great fit for those courses. We do have some that I think match up very well, so we'll get into that. We'll do a materials overview, just talking about the different components of Hawks, what all we have to offer, and then we will actually jump into a presentation of the student and instructor experience within the platform. So first, I did just want to mention our core values at Hawks. As a company, we've been around for about 40 years. We are based on these core values: affordability, support, and mastery learning. So just a little bit of background. Our founder and CEO, Dr. James Hawks, he actually was a statistics professor at the College of Charleston here in South Carolina, and he was kind of unhappy with the course materials available to him, and so built his own, and our company kind of began like that. So we started in statistics. We now offer all sorts of math topics, and then we are in English, sociology, psychology, and economics as well. So a little bit of background, but affordability is extremely important to us at Hawks. We'll jump into that a little bit further, but we understand that students don't need to be buying a $200 textbook. College is expensive enough without that extra cost and that added stress. So we really try to keep our materials affordable. Customer support is also really important to us as a company. And I always say this is probably where you're rolling your eyes and you're saying, yeah, they all say that. But at Hawks, we really mean it. We are a little bit of a smaller company, so that allows us to provide family style support. And what I mean by that is we will have phone hours available Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And when you call that number, we pledge that someone will answer the phone within 4 rings. A live person, I always like to say, no robots at Hawks, and get you the support you need. However, we know that sometimes you and students will need us outside of those phone hours. If that's the case, we also offer a 24/7 live chat. And again, no robots, there is an actual person attached to the chat, and we will get you guys the help that you need, both for you and your students. And then we are also based upon mastery learning. So I'll explain a lot more about what that means for us as we dive into this, but just keep that in mind as we are going through. So I did want to touch on some of our course offerings. So for MDE 10 and 60 in Virginia, this title, Developmental Mathematics, is a fantastic fit. So this will cover everything that you guys cover in both of these courses. Plus, we also have a study skills chapter in here, which will be great for just teaching your students how to be successful in a math course, as well as the actual content. And then for Math 154 and MDE 54, which is usually, or is quantitative reasoning, I would recommend our title, Viewing Life Mathematically plus Integrated Review. So Viewing Life Mathematically has been out for a little bit, but this is our brand new 2nd edition. We actually just released that. We've made some really exciting updates. We're so proud of it, and it would be a great fit for these course offerings. So I will just quickly mention plus Integrated Review with Hawks just means that it is set up to work really well for a co-requisite course structure. So The plus integrated review chapters, as I'll show you when we dive into this, they are just the co-requisite content. So plus integrated review just means essentially those review topics that students probably should know, but maybe don't at that level in the course. And then for Math 155 or MDE 55, we have beginning statistics plus integrated review, which would align very well with that curriculum. And then for Math 161 and MDE 61, we have pre-calculus plus integrated review, which would work very well also. So if you all have any interest in taking a look at these titles, we are able to ship you free review copies or provide online access for you to look as well. So feel free to reach out about that. But continuing on, I wanted to talk about our co-requisite bundling options and kind of break down what that means. So the textbook will only contain the college level content. And then the courseware access, so the access code, will contain the college level content plus those integrated review lessons. And again, I'll show you that once we actually jump into the software. But then we also have a guided notebook that comes with these plus integrated review titles. And the guided notes will contain only the integrated review lessons. And you can use that in conjunction with the courseware. And then here are our various purchasing models. So we do offer direct from bookstore purchasing. We will work directly with your school's bookstore. Your students can also purchase direct from Hawks. And then we also work with a number of inclusive access schools as well. And everybody calls inclusive access something a little bit different, but really what that means is that the cost of the materials is built into tuition for students. So if that's the case, we can do that as well. And then these different check marks will show you what all of that includes. So all of these will allow your students access to the course content on the first day. Even if your students don't get their full access code or can't pay for the materials on the first day, sometimes we know they're waiting on financial aid to come through. Your students can get a free, I believe it's 20 days of temporary access while we're waiting on that. And then lifetime access to the software in the ebook. If your students go through the bookstore or purchase directly from Hawks, they will receive lifetime access to these materials. So typically, if you buy an access code, that tends to last for about a semester or maybe a year, depending on the publisher and the contract. But with Hawks, lifetime access does mean lifetime. So that makes us really ideal, especially for these multi-course sequences. And that would allow your students to pay for the materials once for, say, a calculus sequence. And then if you use it across Calc 1, 2, and 3, you can then divide that cost into thirds. So that is what lifetime access means for us. You also have the option to bundle print materials if you go through your school's bookstore. If your students are purchasing directly from Hawks or with that inclusive access model, that is just the online component. And then, of course, course materials included in tuition is here with the inclusive access model. And then a little bit of background on the textbook and the guided notebook. So you can see over here, the textbook is going to include these things: writing and thinking prompts, application questions, practice questions, and concept checks. Whereas the guided notebook will include all of that plus watch and work. Now you try it, which will essentially prompt your students to watch one of the videos in the software and then try practice problems, much like the one in the video, and then fill in the blank exercises as well. So here are just some screenshots from our guided notebook. This gives you an idea of what it would look like. So again, some of these fill in the blanks. This honestly is just a great tool also for getting your students to take notes in class, get the key concepts. If you have students who aren't really paying attention in class or missing things, the guided notebook can be a great way to help with that. Here's an example of these watch and works. It'll say watch the video for example 4 in the correlating software, and then you can follow along with the video within the workbook. And then within the textbook and the guided notebook, we're going to include strategies for academic success. Again, things like how to succeed in a math class, study skills. We'll include chapter projects. So at the end of every chapter, or if not every, most chapters, there will be a project built that you can assign. You can have students work on that together in class, maybe assign it as extra credit outside of class, up to you, but that is available. Math at work, chapter intros, which is focused on application in the real world. And then same with the math at work career projects. It will show your students how what they're learning can actually correlate to the real world or to their future jobs and careers. And then within our chapters for strategies for academic success, here are some of the topics that those will include. So things like how to read a math textbook, tips for success in a math course, improving math test scores, patience and persistence. We know students can really easily get frustrated and want to give up, but we're going to teach patience and persistence, note taking and the importance of that, especially in a math course. Do you need a tutor? Tips for improving memory, overcoming anxiety, and plenty more. So that's just kind of a glimpse of what's included in those chapters. And then chapter projects, here is a screenshot kind of outlining the math knowledge required for these career explorations. But we've got inventory management, hospitality, nursing, architecture, financial advisor, these all different career paths. And we try to include examples for all of these. So we know that there are lots of students in your classes, probably all of them are going into different fields potentially. So we do want to try to make the math relatable for as many as we can. Here is a sample student to-do list, and I will show you this as well once we jump into the software here in a moment, but I will just mention the to-do list will show your students all that they've been assigned for the semester. So homework, tests, quizzes, projects, and our to-do list is also customizable. So when we jump into the software, you'll notice that my default headers are going to say due today, within a week, or due later. But in the screenshot you see, you can set it up as math, whatever assignments, math, 111 quizzes, test. You can customize it and structure it however you would like. You could break it into modules, chapters, up to you. And then here's some screenshots for making connections and looking forward. Again, trying to connect the math back to the real world and make students really understand why it's important for them to learn it. So here are a couple of screenshots within making connections for decimals and fractions. Here's some questions for you to look for in the following chapter where you can apply the skills you've learned in this section. And then over here as well, a continued example. But I'll also mention that we do offer diagnostic testing. So this is something that you could certainly assign at the beginning of the semester. This is really helpful, especially in those co-requisite structures, where you could create a diagnostic test, have all of your students complete it, and then it would test your students out of the corresponding sections that they have proved they know the content for. So say your student answers all of the questions correct for, say, division with whole numbers, lesson 1.4 on the diagnostic test, then you can see in the screenshot on the right, it will show as done for those correlating homework sections, and only have your student have to complete the sections that they have not proved that they understand already. So it can help with a really customized learning path. If you have a student who has already got that co-requisite content down, they won't then have to complete the homework section. But those who do need the extra support will then be assigned those corresponding lessons. So diagnostic testing is an option. With that, I will jump over to the student experience. We can walk through what the platform would look like, how we'll complete a lesson with Hawks, and then we can come back and touch on some reporting features and the instructor side as well. So let me stop sharing my screen quickly and get that pulled up, and then I will share it again. Just 1 second while she is trying to load. All right, let me share my screen again. And what we are looking at here is the Hawks student dashboard. So this is what your students would see whenever they came into Hawks, if they were coming to the home page. A little caveat, and one thing I'll mention is that we do integrate with the major LMS systems. So Canvas, Blackboard, D2L, Brightspace, Moodle, we do work with. So if your student uses deep linking or single sign-on, then they could be brought directly to their homework lesson rather than coming to the Hawks home page at first. So just keep that in mind. But I'll quickly talk about the options at the top of the screen. We do have the grades tab. This is where your students can see all of their up-to-date grades in Hawks. These would sync over to your LMS system as well, but they can view them here. The Ebooks tab is just what it sounds like. This is where your students would have access to the ebook for whatever class that they're enrolled in. And I will just mention the ebook is included in the cost of the software with us. So don't think that, your student has to purchase an access code and then also purchase the ebook. It's just included. The discussions tab, we offer a live chat and a discussion board. Really up to you as the instructor, how much or how little you want to use this. During COVID, especially in virtual learning, this got very popular. A live chat, professors would host virtual office hours before a test or review session. The discussion board, you can post a topic and have your students thread their responses to it below. The bell here is our notification center. It will let your students know of items due today, tomorrow, past due, anything coming up or past due so that it's on their radar. You can also message your students directly through Hawks if you would like to. And then I'll also mention in the drop-down menu here is where we house that live support and training. So your students will always have access to us should they need us. Then here under my courses, they will see all that they're enrolled in with Hawks. So we are talking about developmental courses. So I will demo developmental math today, but please keep in mind that all of our software is going to function the same way. The content will just change. So as you can see right off the bat, your students will see a mini to-do list letting them know what's due today, within the week, or later, so they know what's on that horizon. They can access any of these lessons directly from these links. But if they click view course, then that is going to bring up their comprehensive to-do list of all that's been assigned for the semester. So this is what I was mentioning in that screenshot within the slideshow. My headers are due today, within the week, or later, but these are customizable. You can break this course out and organize it in any way that you'd like. If we go to the lessons tab here, this will show your students specifically all of the homework that they have been assigned. So if we click into a lesson here, this is going to bring up the Hawks 3-step learning path. So this is really where we'll spend the bulk of our time. This is how your student would work through a homework lesson with us. So whether your student is in a math course, an English course, an econ course, it does not matter. With Hawks, they will see learn, practice, and certify. The reason we do that is because we hear all the time that students complain that they don't like online learning because the systems are confusing. They get lost in them. They're not very user-friendly. We really tried to make it very simple and user-friendly with just the 3 buttons every time, so they always know what to expect. That being said, the Learn mode is what houses the multimedia presentation of the textbook content. So everything that you will see here and learn is going to match what's in the physical textbook and the ebook word for word. The only difference is that Learn is also going to include some interactive components. So we'll click through a couple of pages, but here's one of those. This is an example level video showing your students exactly how to work out this particular question type. So those are available and scattered throughout, showing, again, how to work out specific examples. Now, we also have this watch button available on our Learn screens. If your students click that, it will bring up the lesson level video. So giving your students all the key takeaways for the lesson as a whole, rather than just the specific example. I will note that all of our videos are fairly short, usually between about 5-10 minutes long, leaning more towards 5. So hopefully your students will actually want to take the time to watch them and not be intimidated by, say, an hour-long lecture video. And these are all closed captioned and accessible as well, if that's a concern. We would be glad to talk more about that. But continuing through Learn, they again can just see these examples. This is their textbook content, work through it, watch the videos. But I'd also like to mention our customization options. So you do have the ability to customize all of the Hawks content, and there are several different approaches you can take to that. You do have the ability to completely hide any of our pages that you don't want to cover. So if your students came to this page and you had hidden it, then there would be no page here. That was a bad way to explain it. You can hide anything that you do not want your students to see. You also have the ability to keep our page as a placeholder, but wipe all of the Hawks content and replace it with your own. So if you have something pre-built for a topic, you want to explain something a little bit differently than we do, that's fine. Or option number 3, you can do what we have done here, which is to add a Learn screen note. So that is indicated by this break in the page. And when you add a Learn screen note, the top of the screen will be all of the Hawks pre-created content just left as is. And the bottom of the screen will be whatever you want it to be. So you can make your note something really simple, such as, hey, students, make sure you know those 4 steps. That'll be on the test next week. Or you can make your note a little more complex. You could embed a video like we've done here. Some instructors like to pre-record their lectures and house those within a Learn screen note. You can link to a PowerPoint, an external resource, really up to you. My point being, you have a lot of power with these customizations to really make the course your own. And you don't have to customize anything at all, up to you how much or how little you want to do, but just know that that is an option for you. One other thing I'll mention within Learn is that we will pull out these common errors. So anything that we see commonly tripping up students, we will show them the common wrong solution and then how they should approach it. So hopefully they won't even end up making that mistake once they get into the practice mode and the certify mode. But after your student has been through all of the content and Learn, they can then exit and move on to step 2, which is practice. So I will just mention before I jump in, Learn and practice are preparatory for certify. Certify is just the Hawks word for homework. So certify is what your students will actually be receiving a homework grade for. Because of that, Learn and practice are not graded and they are not by default required, but your students will want to spend time in these modes because it will set them up for success and a good grade here in certified. So practice is exactly what it sounds like. It's not graded, it's penalty free, but all of the question types that your students see in the practice mode will appear for a grade in certify. So coming into practice, there are a couple of different things to point out, but first let's just answer a question. So we do have this keypad here. If you click on it, it will show your students all of the relevant symbols, signs, functions that they will need, and this will expand to include anything else for higher level math. We're just in developmental right now, so it's a pretty short little keypad. But if we answer a question here, I am actually going to try and answer this incorrectly to show you the type of error-specific feedback your students will get with Hawks. If they submit their answer, obviously if this was incorrect, if it was right, this bar would just be green and say so, but we really try to set ourselves apart with our explain error feedback. We really understand that it is important to intervene the moment your student makes a mistake before that mistake gets ingrained into long-term memory. They keep making it, they get frustrated, and with that, if they click explain error, here's an example. We do have artificial intelligence built in to anticipate and diagnose common errors. So we're going to restate the question, tell your student the answer you submitted is incorrect. Now, most feedback stops about here. Your answer is incorrect, try again. We're going to go on to tell them why. It appears you found the sum of the 2 fractions before finding the LCD. Recall, here is what you should have done. So now your student knows why their answer was wrong and what they need to do differently when they go back and try again. We just never ever want your students sitting here saying, well, they told me that my answer was wrong, but I don't know why and I don't know where to go from here, because that's not where learning takes place. So with that, hopefully now they know what to do differently. They can go back to practice and click try similar. They'll receive a different iteration of the same question type. So We do have 50 plus different iterations for all of our math questions. Your students could try similar problems all day long and not receive the exact same numbers twice. So don't let that be a concern. And then we also have a skip button. So if your student has worked through several of this problem type and they say, you know what, I've got this concept down, I'm good with it now, they don't have to spend more time on it. Anything that they see that they go, oh, I've already got that, they can skip it and just spend time focusing on what they actually need more work on. So if we continue to skip and get to something that looks a little bit different, maybe something like this, your student isn't quite sure how to get started, we also have this tutor button. So tutor is going to bring up step-by-step, learn, and solution. Step-by-step is extremely literal. It's just what it sounds like. It will take your students through every step of solving the problem. So you can see right now we're on step 1 of 3, find the LCD. If your student knows the LCD, that's great. They can type it in. But if they're still confused, they can display the step answer, see what it is, click next, and now they're on step 2 of 3, so on and so forth until it's walked them through every step of solving the problem. And one thing I have to point out here that makes Hawks a little bit different is you may be saying, yeah, well, other systems, will show your students examples and show them how they should get to the answer. That's true. But with Hawks, we give them the exact iteration of the question that they received, not a similar one as with most other systems. And the reason we do that is because we find that if we gave your students a similar problem in the tutor or the explanation, that leaves them kind of trying to plug and chug and just copy the formula. Your student might be saying, okay, well, my 8 was a 6 and my 1/3 was a 2/3, and just trying to kind of switch the numbers and copy the formula. And again, that's not how learning takes place. So by giving them the feedback on the exact question they received, it kind of forces them to look at the problem as a whole and really understand the learning path rather than just switching numbers. So that is one thing that we think is pretty unique. The learn mode is also built back into tutor, which might seem small, but this is very popular with students because if they want to go back and review their text content, watch a video, they don't have to stop what they're doing and exit out of their homework to do so. It's just built in for them here. And then lastly, they can always view the solution, but keeping with the Hawks mentality that the solution is really not much good to your student without the explanation of how to get there, we are going to provide that both in numbers and in words. So again, you'll hear me say it multiple times, but it's the why behind the answer for us. We never want your student to say, well, the answer is 25/3, but why? So at that point, or at any point in the tutor, once they feel good, they can go back to practice, then try a similar problem and continue working. So the last thing I'll mention about the practice mode is this send to instructor button. This is an optional feature. By default, it is turned off, but if you were to opt into it, if your student clicked this button, the software would take a screenshot of the question that they're working on and then put it in an email draft to you. So at that point, your student could say, hi, Professor, I'm stuck on question number 5. Can you help? And you could see exactly what they were seeing rather than trying to type out fractions, numbers, symbols, and all that math in an email. So just a little convenience feature for you and students. But after your student has worked through the practice problems, they're feeling good, they are now ready to try for their homework grade, they can move on to certify. So other than the fact that certify is graded, there's really just 2 main things to discuss about it. Number 1, it looks and acts almost exactly like the practice mode. The only real difference is that we have removed those learning aids from the bottom of the screen. Now, before you get scared, let me explain why. That is absolutely for your students' benefit. That is not meant to punish them. I'm not sure if this is something that you all see in your classes, but the number 1 complaint we hear at Hawks every day from instructors all over the country is, well, my students are doing pretty well on the homework, and then they're doing really poorly on the quiz and the test. And they want to know why these grades aren't translating. Most online homework systems allow your students to use learning aids on graded assignments. And in and of themselves, those are good tools, right? They do help your students learn. You want them to use them. But if your student isn't careful, they might not even realize how reliant they are on those learning aids until they get to a test or a quiz. They're not there and they go, oh gosh, I don't actually know how to work this out by myself. So that's why we remove them here in the homework, to get your students used to working through a question set on their own. And by the time they get to the test, it's not a shock when they don't have that help there. The second thing to note about Certify is that we make it mastery based. So a lot of systems say that they're mastery based, but we really have a different approach. Let me explain what that means for Hawks. So by default, we are going to set a mastery level at about 80%. Like everything else with us, that is customizable. So you could raise it or lower it as you see fit for your class, but generally, we find that if your students get 80% of the homework correct, that's a fairly good indicator that they have mastered the content. So with 15 questions as the default in this lesson, side note, that's customizable as well. You can change the number of questions, you can handpick the questions. But with 15 questions in this particular lesson and an 80% mastery level, your students can look in this red heart in the corner, which is meant to be like their lives left in a video game, and see that they can get 3 questions wrong and still receive a 100 for mastering this homework assignment, because they have achieved that mastery level that you've set for them. So students really like that they can miss 3 questions and still make a 100 or whatever that is for that particular lesson. The point being, you don't have to be perfect. You can make a few mistakes. There's a little bit of wiggle room, but you have to prove to us that you have mastered the concept as a whole, and then you're rewarded for it. And then as they work, this meter will fill up towards the gold medal at the end. So we try to make it as much like a game as you can make homework, with the lives or strikes and the meter, but students do seem to really like that approach. But say that your student misses a 4th question, or say they dip below whatever mastery level you've set for them. At that point, we're also not just going to give them a bad grade. That's where we're going to bring in the adaptive component of the software. So in this instance, as soon as your student missed a 4th question, the software would pull them out of Certify and put them directly back into the practice mode, where there they would receive a custom question set based on what they got wrong in Certify. So it's really tailored to each individual student and what they specifically need to work on, while not making them go back and spend more time on things they've already mastered. So we only think this approach makes sense, because every single student in your classroom is probably going to struggle with something a little bit different than the student sitting beside them. And every student's going to learn at their own pace. So this custom approach allows them to do that. And then keep in mind, once they're back in practice mode with that custom question set, they have the learning tools again. So if they need to use the tutor, it is there for them. If they make a mistake, they'll receive that specific explain error feedback. They can try similar as much as they need to. And then once they feel good about what they missed and Certify, they can come back and try again. So by default, we are going to give your students unlimited Certify attempts up until the due date. The reason we do that is because typically the first time your students are really figuring out what they do and do not know is on a graded assignment like a test or a quiz. And at that point, if they're on a test and your student doesn't know something, there's nothing they can do about it. They just don't know it at that point. We think homework should be a lower stakes learning environment. This is where you want your students making their mistakes and learning from them. So by the time they get to the test, they can say, oh, I've already been there and done that, made that mistake and learned from it. And with this mastery framework, we do see homework to test scores correlating much better, and most importantly, trending upwards. So that is really our explanation of mastery. That's how we frame it, and we do see really good success rates with that. But exiting back out, that is again our 3-step learning path. That's what your students will do every time they go to complete a homework assignment. Again, the functionality is the same, the content will just change based on the course or the lesson that they're working on. But that being said, I will switch my share back to our presentation. We can tie it all together and then leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. So let me get that pulled back up and share again. All right. So we just walked through the student experience. Quickly, I'll share a little bit about the instructor side of things as well, some of the reporting and analytics. We didn't have enough time today for me to fully jump into that, but just know that I'm only scratching the surface here. What we're looking at right now are screenshots of some of our reports. So off the bat, you can see a by lesson breakdown for your students who have done the assignment, who have done it but turned it in late, or who have not done it at all. So at a glance, you can see kind of where your students are falling with the homework assignments, but then you can also click on any of these lessons. So here, let's just say we clicked on 1.1, that's reflected here in the assignment. You can see a per question breakdown of performance as well. So at a glance, you could see, all right, 30% of my class missed question number 1. So maybe that indicates an area that they need a little bit more work on. You could actually click on the hyperlinked question number 1 and it would pull up a question that is similar to the one your students received. So you could then say, hey students, 30% of you missed this one. Let's talk through it. Let's work through one together, figure out what's going on. So really detailed insight into how your students are doing. We also have this tool under reports, search by criteria. This will allow you to search your students with whatever criteria that you determine. So you can see some of the options here. You could say, I wanted to filter my students with an overall grade between 0 and 70. So maybe your students who aren't performing as well in the course. And maybe you check the box for students who have spent less than 10 minutes per day in any lesson. Whatever these filters are, you can combine them, you can check multiple boxes, just set your parameters and click filter report, and it will bring up a report of your students who meet that criteria. And from there, you can actually send them a message directly from here. The great thing about this as well is that it will send the message individually to each student. So don't worry about clicking send message and students being able to see who else got that message. It goes to each one individually. And then you could say, hey guys, it looks like you have, or hello, Renee, since it would be going to the individual, looks like you haven't logged into Hawks for say 3 days. Get back in there. Let me know if you have any questions and keep working through your lessons. So just an option there for you to communicate with your students directly from the platform. We also have web test objective reports. So all of our questions in our question bank are tied to specific learning objectives. And with that, you can run these web test objective reports to see how your students are progressing towards these different learning objectives. Some schools actually use this for accreditation purposes. Really up to you how much or how little you want to use it, but it will show you the percentage of your students who have met that learning objective based on the questions tied to it, and whether they met it or failed it. So that is really easy for you to see as well. So that is really the bulk of what I wanted to show. That leaves us about 10 minutes or so for questions in our raffle, but feel free to let me know. And then under contact me, here is my email address. If you'd like to request a copy of anything, if you have further specific questions or would like to set up a one-on-one meeting, feel free to email me. This is also a link to my calendar, so you can view my availability and just put a meeting directly on there. But thank you guys so much, and I'm happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you so much, Kate. We do have a few questions here. Good. The first one is, does Hawks partner or work with or is compatible with any online proctoring services?
Yes, great question. So Respondus Lockdown Browser does come with the Hawks platform. So that's something that you can certainly use. We can also work with other proctoring systems such as Proctorio, HonorLock, or Respondus Monitor. However, your school would have to have those licenses and then we could integrate with it. But just Respondus Lockdown Browser, which doesn't allow your students to, open anything else or click to any other tabs as they're in a test, that comes with Hawks. So yeah, great question.
All right, excellent. Our next question here is, do you integrate with any learning management systems?
Yes, good question as well. So we do integrate with Canvas, Blackboard, D2L Brightspace, and Moodle. Those are kind of the big four. Often, if you work with something else that I didn't just list, we can likely make it work, but those are the four we hear the most, and we do integrate with those.
All right, excellent. And is there a student and instructor component to that?
Let me make sure I understand the question correctly. With the student component to that, they could just log into I'm just using Canvas, their Canvas section for the course, and it would show them all of the Hawks assignments they've been given. If you do deep linking, your students would see in their Canvas section, for example, you have lesson 1.1 due on Friday. They could click on the link to lesson 1.1 and it would take them directly to Learn, Practice, Certify for that lesson. And then the kind of more instructor component, you can determine when grades will sync over, how often they'll sync, as well as due dates, and all of that good stuff as far as grading structure.
All right, thank you. And then one final question here. Do you have any study tools for students that are specifically for studying rather than just reviewing what they've already done?
Yes, so that kind of varies a little bit by the particular math title you're looking at as far as what there is to offer. But with the title, we kind of just walked through and looked at the software for developmental math, which is the fit for NDE 10 and 60. We do have an entire study skills chapter. So it is called our Chapter 0. And here, if I actually click back a couple of slides, these are some of the things that it will include. So how to read math, how to be successful in a math course, improving test scores, really just kind of teaching your students how to study math and how to be successful, because we hear time and time again, students want to succeed and they want to learn, but many of them just don't know how to study math. So that is available. And then outside of just our Chapter 0, we will of course have those videos. You saw them built into the platform as lesson level and example level videos. We'll also house those all on what we call Hawks TV, which is just where they can see all of our videos in one place. And then of course, we have the tutor and explain error feedback for further help within the practice mode.
All right, excellent. And then in terms of test preparation, are there any tools within the courseware to help with that?
Yes, excellent. We do have a practice test feature, which let's see, how much time have we got here? Do I have time to show it, Joanna?
Definitely.
Okay, perfect. So let me quickly stop sharing and then switch back. This is a great one to bring up. So we do have a practice test feature available for students. If I go back from a homework lesson here to kind of the course structure within Hawks, we're just on the lessons tab, which is where you go to access the Learn, Practice, Certify. We also have a web test tab. This is where your students will see any tests and quizzes that have been assigned to them. I just don't have any preloaded here, but practice web test. This is always available for your students to access. At any point, they can create themselves a practice test. So say that they know that they've got exam number 1 coming up. They can just name their practice test, whatever they'd like, use the drop-down menu to select the lessons it'll be on. Let's say exam 1 is going to be on chapters 1 and 2. I'm just going to add some lessons here. Use the drop-down switch and let's add a couple from chapter 2. And then maybe you told them that test is going to be 15 questions and they'll get half an hour to complete it, or whatever those parameters are. Your students can just select, click start, and then the software is going to build a practice test for them that looks and acts exactly like the actual test environment will. So your students can see how much time they have left. They do have the ability to hide and unhide that. Some students get stressed by the timer. That's okay. And then I'll actually just click a couple of answers here, not even trying to get them right, so don't judge me, but to generate some data for us here. I just clicked a button to show you this feature as well. The character you entered is not required in this answer. So I also just wanted to touch on answer tolerance. That's something that we hear as a concern a lot. If your student types a character that is not required in the answer, they will get this warning message rather than their answer being counted wrong. Same if something is entered in unsimplified form or is not in simplest form, rather than counting it wrong, they would get a similar warning message. But continuing through here, again, I'm just going to answer a couple. Another thing, your students do have the ability to skip within a practice test or the actual test. So say they're not sure how to do this one, they could click next and move on and continue to skip until they got to one they did want to work out. Also, say that your student has been skipping around, but now their time is running out and they need to see the ones they haven't done yet. Rather than trying to go through previous and next, they can use this drop-down menu, click hide the ones they have answered, and just see the ones they have left to do. And then, of course, if they click on it, it will take them to that problem. But I'm going to go ahead and submit. Now, it'll also warn your student if their assignment is incomplete, so they can't accidentally submit and get a lower grade than they thought, but I'll go ahead and submit for these purposes. And this will show you, once it loads, an at-a-glance view of what your students would receive. So off the bat, they'll be able to see their score. Now, obviously, I was guessing and got us a 0, so that was not great. But assuming your students had gotten some right, let's just pretend that we answered lessons for or questions for lesson 1.2 well. They would see that reflected in green. So at a glance, your students can look at their pie chart and see their overall performance breakdown for what they did well, what they need some more work on, and then by lesson as well. So say we did really well on 1.2, that would be reflected with a high green bar, but then your student could see, wow, I need a lot more work on lessons 1.3, 1.1, and 2.3. So just helping them identify where they need to spend their time as they continue to study. They can access this, they can retake this as many times as they would like. They always have access to this feature, so they can create new practice tests, but then they can also review their specific attempts. So if we click review, it will bring up the practice test that they just took, and it will show your students what they answered, what the correct answer was. But again, you've heard me say it, it's the why behind the answer with us. If your student clicks open tutor, it will give them that explain error feedback to tell them exactly why their answer was incorrect and how they should have gotten to the correct one. So that is available for them, as well as learn, which will reiterate the content. And then they can also see the solution if they just want to see it worked out step by step as well. But that was an excellent question. I'm glad I got to show you all this. This is a feature that students really love within our platform.
Well, thank you so much, Kate. We are just about out of time, so we'll go ahead and switch gears, but we do appreciate everything that you shared with us today. If there are any remaining questions, feel free to stop by the Hawks booth, and we'll be happy to answer those there. And now we'll go ahead and shift into our giveaways. Right now, each winner today is going to receive a $25 Amazon gift card, and we'll go ahead and start the spinning. So our first winner will be, looks like that is Pamela Nation. Congratulations, Pamela. All right, we'll spin for our second winner. And we have, looks like we have Kelly McCabe. Congratulations. And then we have one final spin. And our third winner will be Christian Mason. Congratulations, Christian. All right, now winners, you will receive those gift cards via email following the conference. Now the next session of the day will begin at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can view the chat for the session meeting room link or access the conference website for a complete list of sessions and descriptions. While accessing the conference website, don't forget to swing by the virtual booth to say hello to the Hawks team. you a quick 5-minute presentation and be entered to win a $50 Amazon gift card. And we'll see you all at your next session.